Good morning, everybody. Steve here from The Varied Life. I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, and today we're going to be checking out some cool stuff. We're going to be asking the question, why is it so hard to find good information on Korean visas? Now, this deals with being an American expat and a little bit of background. My wife was a Korean citizen, and then our eyes met across a crowded room, love at first sight. We courted, dated, got married, and yeah, we've been a thing ever since for the last 34 years. Apparently, I'm a keeper. With that said, what we ended up doing is finding out that we could retire early and we could do it in Korea, not via a retirement visa, but through a different type of visa that Korea offered, and that stems from the F4 visa because my wife was once a Korean national and she became a U.S. citizen. They have a returning Korean or somebody of Korean ancestry, or your parents were Koreans or grandparents were Koreans, and there's verifiable proof. Those people can get an F4 visa. Now, the term on the F4 visa is 1 to 2 years. My wife, it was 2 years. And then as a spouse, I was able to file for an F1 visa, the spouse of an F4 holder visa person. So it was, wife had to get the background check. She had to get fingerprints, all that stuff. I didn't have to go through that. I just had to put my information. It was good to go. But the problem is, when we found out about some of this, I immediately went online and started looking to find out, what are the requirements? What list, is there a list of Korean visas, and what is applicable to us and what isn't? I want to know the details. I want to know what forms to fill out. And unfortunately, it was a mess because the way the information is presented for Korean visas, it's not like there's a list on the Korean government or the Korean embassy consulate websites that shows just a comprehensive list of all the different types of visas. At least I haven't found any yet. I found lists of visas, but they're not from the Korean government, which is oddly strange because that list is pretty accurate to most and better informative than the Korean consulate information that I found. So yeah, why is it so hard? I have absolutely no idea, but it is very frustrating when you start looking at information and you use your Google foo, get on there to try to find information. You will find Korean consulates in the United States, which is as it should be, and then you'll find them in other countries like Great Britain or the Philippines or whatever. And for the exact same visas, some websites will have more information than other ones. Talk about, very confusing. And again, the lack of having just a list of visas that are available and how the Korean government goes about presenting these, or it's just not in a user-friendly fashion. So I think that's the biggest problem right there. So we're going to take a look at some stuff. And again, like I said, what we ended up doing, there's the wife and I, and we just returned from a trip from Busan, doing the cable car and some good stuff. We decided to retire in Korea. And, one other thing, we sold everything in the United States. Once we found out that we could get the visa, we arrived in Korea on a tourist visa, and then we applied for our visas once we were in Korea. For those people who don't know, you can do that, but you have to wait for that visa to get approved. And your status is on hold until you get the result of that application process. So we come on a 90-day visa. If our F1 and F4 visa took longer than 90 days, it's no worry because you're in limbo and you're awaiting the approval or disapproval, so there's no worry about that. But the other good thing about it is that your visas, you can apply for those early. You can apply for those things in a or from a Korean consulate in the United States and get them approved. And then when you come to Korea, boom, you can hit the ground running, boots on the ground. You don't have to wait. You can open Korean bank accounts, get permanent cell phone service, and the whole 9 yards. And you won't waste time just waiting around like we did. Of course, we were retired, so it didn't really matter. But in hindsight, it would have been better to apply for those visas before we came to Korea. But in the end, it worked out well. So with that, generally what people will do is check up and they'll go to the Korean visa portal. They'll find this and type in Korean Embassy, United States, so they do that as well. But this is what pops up. And this is kind of frustrating because Visa Navigator. If you go to the Visa Navigator, you put what continent you're from, the purpose of your entry, which is all of these things here, and then, the country or region, you're from whatever country, length of stay, 91 days or longer, permanent residence. But basically, we're going to hone in on the visa categories. I think why wouldn't you just have a list? Have this, and then also have a list of just all the Korean visas with their nomenclatures and their subcategories and all that stuff so that you can kind of hone in and understand what you're doing. But they don't. We have things like short-term visa, and it'll propagate and give a listing like this. Short-term general, tourist, group tourist, business visitor, blah, 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 short-term visitor, Korean. There's just a lot of stuff that's just like makes you scratch your head. Medical treatment, language, journalism, transfer, investment, trade, overseas Korean, dependent overseas spouse, dependent of overseas Korean, F412. You would think that would be it according to what we're seeing on this website. But the problem is that's not the visa that I would get. So, it's just a very odd thing. Dependent of overseas Korean, former D or E holder, university graduates, permanent resident of whatever country, corporate executive, multinational, entrepreneur, overseas Korean, government employee, teacher, person of age 60 or older, marriage migrant, spouse of Korean national, child raising. This doesn't even show the visa for me as being a spouse of somebody who is an overseas or a returning Korean or somebody who has Korean ancestry. So the way this is all organized is going to have a lot of people confused and asking questions. And I think there stems the problem of why there's so much bad information, and then you throw in people like us, where we had a Korean immigration lawyer here in Korea, and they work in the same building as Korean immigration. So they're up to speed on all this stuff. So when the wife was asking questions and finding out about the visas, there's more information that they were able to provide than what was on the website that we see over here. Not here, over here. So, it's just very, very, say problematic. And getting your information from this, family visitor, dependent family, F13, cohabitee of diplomat, foreign government official, marriage, immigrant parents and families, spouse, underage children of F4, overseas Korean, F19, that's not even the designation, parents of international student, underage children of Korean national, spouse of Korean resident, permanent resident, dependent family. None of these applied to me. So it's kind of like, you start asking questions, or you get with the Korean consulate and you say, hey, here's the deal. I want to take a look at, I'm interested in looking at this information for this type of visa, which you found on the website. And then you explain your situation. And more often than not, the stories that I've been told is that people end up saying, the person who works at the Korean consulate says, no, that's not right, blah, 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 blah. And so there is the disconnect. There's what you should do, and then there's what's on the website, and there's more than what's on the website. So, automatically what we end up seeing here is a lot of problems, because people in the United States and the people that I've interacted with who have done the Korean visa process and come to live and retire in Korea, similar to what we did, they did the exact same thing with those websites, and then they go to the Korean consulates and they ask, or the embassies, and they're like, it's like beating their head up against the wall because no, that's not how it works, and blah 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 blah. And then it's like, well, who's got the real answer? When actually it's just not all the information is on the website. Again, a comprehensive list would aid a lot of people when it comes to this. So we're going to go over some more of this. So, for example, here is the embassy of the Republic of Korea in the USA, and we're talking about F1 visas. And if you do a search, like we put in F1 visa and you search, you get 4,359 results. And anything that has an F in it, it's the, Embassy of Korea and Republic of Trinidad Security Service Protocol. I mean, you're looking for an F1 visa, so let's type F1 visa. The search for this is, there's F4 visa, but that's just under the forms. And then, so it's kind of like, so you click on this and then you see the forms and stuff like that, but there's no information on the F4 visa is what I'm saying. And so it's very problematic to try to find information, and it is just the search engine sucks. It's basically what it comes down to. Now, here is another example here's the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Houston, Texas. And I was able to find this F4 visa for overseas Korean. Well, why couldn't I find that on the main embassy of the Republic of Korea in the United States of America? It doesn't make sense. So I can find this on the Houston Korean page, but not on the main one. At least I haven't been able to. You put in F-4, you just can't find it. This talks about the required documents, which brings me to a situation that somebody had asked me or presented the thing saying, is there a requirement that you must speak and read Korean, read, write, and speak Korean to be able to get a visa in Korea? And the answer is depends. If you're doing permanent residency and you're going to be a citizen of Korea and running that whole gambit, you're going to have to spend a certain amount of years as a permanent resident, and then you can go towards your Korean citizenship, where you will be required reading and writing test and history and all of that of Korea. It's just, I'm not smart enough for that. But there are other visas that will allow you to stay long-term if you meet certain requirements. And again, trying to find this information is very, very hard because there's so much differing information, even on the Korean websites. So yeah, there's a big difference between what we see on the Houston website versus the United States Korean Embassy website. So, it talks about the required documents, certificate of family census, naturalization certificate. We check the original exact date of your loss of Korean nationality. So if you, for the F4, that's saying that you're Korean ancestry and when did you lose your Korean citizenship. It could have been through adoption when you're adopted as a baby, or you became a United States citizen. So either your direct ancestor was a Korean national, general required documents. It goes through all of this, criminal and history check, FBI and apostille information, confirmation by U.S. State Department, blah, blah, blah. 60 age exemption objects, 60 years of age or more, children under 13, independents, patriots and family of deceased, special contributor. So, I have no idea what that is. Certificate in Korean proficiency, one of the documents, TOPIK first grade or more, Sejong Hakdong elementary level 1B or more. Exemption, he or she has a Korean nationality in the past time, which, like my wife did, and many other Koreans who became American citizens, will fall under this objection or exception. So they don't have to take that test. I've had some people tell me, well, if you're a Korean national and you become a U.S. citizen, then you have to take the TOPIK test, and you have to score a certain score to be able to get the F4 visa. And that's not the case. And I think this stems from a lot of people it's not there's not a lot of continuity between the Korean embassy websites and consulates in the United States, even other countries. It's differing information, and some of them will have this information and other ones won't. So that's why there's a lot of disinformation that comes out, because it's just not standardized across all of the Korean websites. So multiple entry visa, overseas Korean holder is not allowed to hold a job in simple labor service or activities against virtuous public customs. There's some, this is some information that we didn't even hear, because my wife was told through our immigration lawyer that she would be able to work if she wanted to. Of course, we're retired, so we're not going to work. Just a lot of differing information, and I seem to choose our immigration lawyer, who works in the same building as Korean immigration, and they are apprised of the most up-to-date information and changes in immigration. Matter of fact, they said that the F1 visa for spouse of a Korean F4 visa holder is going to be changed in name, and it's going to become an F3 visa in name. All the requirements are still going to be the same, and so that's going to be an upcoming thing. So, just a lot of differing information. So this is Houston, and then you have the same thing, Republic of Korea for Great Britain, and then you look and as you go through this, you'll see some of these things are the same, but some of it is a little bit different. So again, it's just kind of interesting. And then like F1 visiting or joining family, visa members goes through this. That's a pretty small list of things, and other pages will show a lot more information. When I looked up and tried to find information on just the list of Korean visas, because you have like F1 visas, you have F4 visas, but then there's subcategories of these visas, and it's hard to find a list of that. So I went online and tried to find a list. And one of the results that I got was Wikipedia. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. So list of South Korean visas. The thing is with Wikipedia, you will find some good information, but there can also be some flawed information. So again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But here, it shows the different categories, B1, B2, and then down below that, you'll have some extra identifiers indicating some different conditions of those visa holders. So like you have your C1, 2, 3, and 4, then C3, 1, C3, 2, 3, all of this stuff. So it's a better breakdown of those different types of Korean visas. But is this upgraded as much as it should be? I don't know. It depends. Like if we go to the F visas, F1 visas, visiting or joining family, and it gives a breakdown of the number of the visas issued. So, in 2005, and then 2010, 2013, 2017, we've got a huge jump up to 82,000 plus. So, but then again, it doesn't have like an explanation or the subcategories of the F1. So, like mine is an F1 5 or whatever it is, F1 3. But we don't see that listed down here as well. So it's just, maybe it's because it changes so much. I don't know. Even the Korean immigration lawyer had said that it's kind of a problem getting standardized information and continuity. Across all of the websites, it's just a thing you have to deal with. So it is what it is. We talked about the F4 visa for overseas Koreans. There's different ones of those. And look at how many have been issued for those. Nothing in 2005, but 2010, you had 129,000. Then we had 280,000 in 2013. Then we had over 500,000 in 2017. And hell, the number is probably more now in 2025. So we're seeing a lot more of overseas Koreans returning to Korea. People who are Korean citizens who became U.S. citizens and are now coming back to Korea for whatever reason. So just kind of a big thing there. So when we get down to the F4, overseas Korean, descendant of overseas Korean, formerly D or E visa holder, university grads, permanent resident of whatever country, corporate executive, entrepreneur, multinational company. So there's a lot of different subcategories within the F4 visa. So you got to be mindful of that and realize that these will change. And we wouldn't know the change unless we had our immigration lawyer let us know and fill us in on all this stuff. So yeah, a lot of interesting things going through the visa. But another a good resource that I found which is a pretty good list, comes from a website of Institute for Basic Science. Now IBS has, I guess they deal with, contract or work in Korea. And so they have a good list of living in Korea, and we'll take a look at that. They also have a good list of things like this. So living in Korea, this is, and let's just take a look at this. So I'll show you the Institute for Basic Science, and they do a bunch of science stuff and events in Korea and whatever. I guess they hire a bunch of people. So where is it? Okay, we'll go back. And they have a huge section on living in Korea. This is a really good list because on the overview, it goes over country information, language support, immigration, which again, how good and how well is it updated? I don't know. Year-end tax settlements, housing, real estate agents, housing contracts, moving domestically, rooms, rent, utilities, washing, internet, TV, phone. It generally has some pretty good information. Of course, there's nothing that replaces having boots on the ground and actually going through it yourself or talking with somebody who's actually done it to give you a more up-to-date insight on these things. But it's a pretty good list nonetheless. So for the people that are wondering about it, transportations, buses, taxis, all of that stuff. Doesn't have anything about cars in here though. So even on elevators, we're talking about elevators. I don't know. That's kind of a weird elevator thing. But it goes into detail. And the cool thing about elevators is that if you make the wrong choice with an elevator in Korea, and you press the wrong number, you can press it again and it'll reset. So yeah, I don't know why that's not a thing in the United States. Talks about banking, currency, transfers, stuff like that, digital, ATMs, cards, paying fees, currency exchange, phishing and hacking. This is a pretty good website, talking about insurance, health insurance for the national health insurance system. They've got different types of, health insurance plans that you can choose from. But if you're in Korea, living in Korea, and you're in Korea for more than 90 days, you're going to have to enroll in the national healthcare system and or have an exemption by having medical and health insurance that meets certain requirements for the Korean government. And for those of you as a military retiree, I have TRICARE Overseas Select. And with that, it ends up that allows for the exemption to not have to pay for the Korean national health insurance, which some people pay for that and have their TRICARE Select. So not saying that one is better than the other. You can have both. I've known some people who have both and enjoy that. We just use the TRICARE Overseas Select because I'm a military retiree and we don't have to pay any extra. We just don't see the need of having the, personally for us, it's down to personal preference for the Korean national health insurance. So, but that's just us. I mean, other people find some value in it, and there is value in that, because you're part of the system. You can see doctors, and it just comes down to personal preference. So basically, let's get back to where we were. It's got a lot of good information on this, on living in Korea. And again, this is the Institute for Basic Science, Living in Korea, and you can find the link and get all the information. So contents, updates, they have a PDF book of Living in Korea, the 2022 edition. So yeah, a few years behind, but let's just take a look at that and I'll show you talks about. PDF version is available here. And again, the registration date was 2022. First edition was meant to be more of an end all. The newer edition is shorter in length and whatever. So let's take a look at that real quick. I've looked at this a few times, and it's a pretty decent little publication here. And it's got information on a number of things. History of Korea, Korean language, calendars and holidays, accommodations, paying rent, utilities. It's a pretty good stuff. Internet plans, internet cafes, phone carriers. So there's a lot of great information that comes in this book. It's just a few years old. But again, that is an option to help you. And then if you're a military retiree, usually military bases around Korea, if you're living close to one, will have classes or free language courses. Some of them have volunteers who give tours in the local economy and end up that you can, they'll take you out on marketplace days and show you how to do some banking or simple traveling or whatever using the local transportation systems. It really kind of varies between base to base. So that's another option that you have to get yourself acclimatized to living in Korea as an American expat. So, excuse me. And even with that, there's people that have asked, and well, your wife speaks Korean, reads, writes Korean. Yep, she was born and raised in Korea, became a U.S. citizen. But we were gone from Korea for a very long time, decades. And so when we came back to Korea, there's a lot of things that changed. So even though my wife reads, writes, and speaks Korean like a champ, there are so many things that changed in Korea over time, and the way that they do banking and laws and this and that, and the way things that were done when she was in her, early 20s versus now, decades later, a lot of things have changed. And so the things that we grew up with as a married couple, we were Americanized to banking, to taxes, to registration, and all of the things that comes with living in the United States. A lot of those things are different. They're the same, but they're different in Korea in the way that you go about them, banking, the whole nine yards. There are differences, and there's a lot of, like when we opened up our Korean bank account. We opened up a Korean bank account, and they said, okay, well, you opened up your Korean bank account. There are no joint bank accounts. Yeah, so we each had to get our own bank account, which is really odd for us. And then the other thing that was strange is they said, well, now you're on a probationary status on your Korean bank account. So you can only withdraw, I think it was a million won a day. And it's like, well, how do we buy a car? How do we buy an apartment if that's the limit? Well, in those things, you can get exemptions or exceptions to that withdrawal limit, but generally you're going to have a withdrawal limit of 1,000,000 won per day until you have 3 months of auto payments, and then that requirement is taken off, and this is just our bank. Different banks have different rules, and so they're not all the same. And even though you go to the same bank, it's almost like a franchise. So a bank has under the same name as this bank over here, those two banks won't talk to each other. So it's not like in the United States where if you go to, Wells Fargo. If I go to Wells Fargo in Colorado and a Wells Fargo in California, they can access my account. I can withdraw money, do whatever. Here in Korea, it's not the way it is. So with the bank that we go to, they're more like franchises. And we went to another city and we stopped in. We needed some money or something. And so the wife went in and they said, no, we can't access your money or your account because it's with a different office branch. Yeah, who knew? So, yeah, a lot of different things pop up in Korea, which is normal for Koreans who are raised up in this. It's like, yeah, everybody knows that. But we didn't know that because we spent so much time away. So that's gonna cause some frustration and angst with you and your spouse because a lot has changed. And even though they read, write, and speak Korean, or even if you do, if you know Korean 100% better than anybody else in the world, if you haven't lived in Korea and you don't grow up with the norms of living in Korea, you're still going to be lost and you're going to be frustrated, and people are going to take it for granted that they think that you know everything that they know when you don't, because you haven't been living in Korea for decades. So yeah, there will be some problems. There will be some misinformation. There will be assumptions saying, oh well, this person reads, writes, and speaks Korean, so they should know. I'm assuming they know everything there is about banking or this or that or whatever, and that's not the case. So there will be bumps in the road. So, yeah, and let's get back to the visa types, because I want to get back to this. On this ibs.re.korea website center thing, they also have visa types. And it says, please note that this is a list of all South Korea visas that exist. That might be, but there's changes in immigration law. And just like I said, our immigration lawyer told us that the F1 visa, the visa that I have, the F113 or whatever it is, F15, that's going to change in name, and it's going to be considered an F3 visa in name. Requirements will still be the same. So how often is this website updated? Is it updated every time there's a change in immigration law or the visa system? I don't know. You could probably check if you did the... No, it doesn't have it. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of, you'll see what happens. If you have immigration, call immigration directly. Wikipedia has an overview page, which we looked at, which is generally good information. Yeah. F visa holders in Korea, helpline only could help if you have questions on whatever, But this is generally a decent page for the Korean visas and the listings. So I have A's, we have B's, C's, D, and journalism, all kinds of different stuff. We get into E and technology and research and teaching, professional, skilled, manufacturing, whatever. Get into the F1, and then you got the sub variations or the subcategories. F1-D, workstation or digital nomad, falls under an F1, which is visiting or joining family. How that doesn't make sense to me. So again, the listing and how things are organized just doesn't make sense to me, because if I'm looking, the F1D is a digital nomad, but it's under the F1, which is for visiting or joining family. Is it visiting? Are you visiting? If you're being a digital nomad, then you're working. That would seem like it would be a work visa. You're just working for, you see what I mean? It's just kind of odd how they do this. The F2, you see all these things over here: refugee, point system, science, engineering, single, F3, F4, Korean overseas. So you have F411. Descendant of overseas Korean is F4-12. Former holders F4-13, whatever, and then multinational company is F4-18. The way these are organized just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just not that smart. F5 visas. This is interesting because there's general permanent resident, spouse of Korean national, minor children of Korean citizen, spouse or minor child of permanent resident, investors, overseas Korean who stayed more than 2 years. Yeah, there's people with a PhD in certain major in employment. Pension beneficiaries. That's a one that is going to be coming up. A lot of information, or interesting information, I should say, about the F4's pension beneficiaries. There's differing information, and generally, what I've had a number of people tell me that you have to be 65 years old or older for the F5-13 visa, and then I had other people say it was age 62, then I had other people say it was age 60, and then, so my wife asked the Korean immigration lawyer, and they said, yeah, no, you don't have to be the age, you just have to meet the requirements and have to have X amount of years of living in Korea as a resident. So, yeah, again, just a lot of interesting information So when you look up the, let me see if I can find it. There's some information on the F5 visa. So we'll see how this goes. This is IMI Korea Visa, immigration.com Korea Visa. I think this is a company or whatever. But it talks about the F513 permanent visa. So you can apply for the permanent visa if you're 60 years of age or older, and your annual pension from abroad of the most recent year prior to the date of application is twice what the GNI of Korea. So generally, GNI right now is probably around $33,000 or $34,000 a year. So you're talking about 68,000 ish. People receiving a pension is more than twice. The Korean language requirement is waived. Now, this is what we found out from our Korean immigration lawyer, is that you do not have to provide twice of the Korean GNI if you can read, write, and speak Korean. So you take a proficiency test and you're good. You only have to have a pension that is at least worth 1 year of the Korean GNI. So again, that's why it ends up saying a Korean language requirement is waived, exempt from income requirements. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting information that comes into play. The amount of the pension received abroad in the year prior to a date must be at least twice, but again, that's the language requirement is waived. If you pass the language test and reading and all that stuff, then you only have to pay or have a pension that meets the 1 year of the Korean GNI, not 2 times. You must have prove the pension that you already received in the past year and not applying for a certificate of future pension. So you can't say, well, I'm going to retire next year, so I'm going to apply for this special visa now. You can't do that. Basic documents that are submitted. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, imagine that. What are the odds? As we go back here, a copy of your foreign pension certificate, which must be apostilled. There's different companies you can find online that will do apostille services, and send it to them. They'll verify that your pension, you're from whatever XYZ company or military or both or whatever. You would be able to verify that. It's kind of like getting a notary of those documents. A copy of your pension deposit passbook, identity guarantee, which is your passport. Copy of your pension deposit passbook is, in other words, is your bank statements for the previous year. Our immigration lawyer said federal tax returns showing, where those funds came from. And a good idea is to also, this is kind of an important one, is to take these documents that are in English and have them translated into Korean. It's not a requirement, but what that will do is it will make the application process so much easier for the people that are processing your paperwork. Excuse me. So for example, when the wife and I did our F4 and F1 visas respectively, we had to put in our how much money we make. We had to have our bank statements, how I'm getting paid because I can't work while I'm in Korea, but I'm, my pension and everything provides the funds for us to live. So I had to verify that income or those funds. So by doing that, having it in English and in Korean just made it so much easier for the immigration office to do their job. And matter of fact, when we turned in those documents, they looked at the English copies and they're like, because it's a lot of information. Then it's like, why is there so much? And then they pulled and they saw the documents that were translated into Korean. And I just used online translation. I think I used Microsoft Word and the translate from English to Korean. And they're like, oh, this is nice. They actually said, this is nice and this will help. So yeah, there's something to be said for having that in your packet regardless of what you're doing. Make it easy for the immigration people to do their jobs. Certificate of Foreign Criminal History, that's going to be like your FBI background check. So when we talk about that right there, integrated application, in other words, your application, other required documents for each individual. The American client was in his late 70s, but he was working for a Korean company on an E7 visa doing work related to the U.S. military. After reviewing my pension certificate, I decided to apply for the F-13 green card. During the process, he was required to submit an FBI background check, but was rejected 3 times because his fingerprints were faint. Eventually, he attached a medical certificate stating he had no fingerprints. Luckily, he was able to get a green card. Who doesn't have fingerprints? And why would this be on this? That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't get it. And this concept, I guess they do business, but I found that this information is immigration lawyer and whatever. So you got to pay to play with that. But why would you even put this on a permanent resident case? It doesn't make any sense. No fingerprints, whatever. It should be just a Barney Basic vanilla person. So anyway, yeah, it says you have to be 60 years of age or older. According to our immigration lawyer, they said you don't have to be 68 years 60 or older. They've done people that were younger than that with this F-513 visa. So again, could it be that the immigration lawyer is wrong? Yeah, it could be. But generally, this is some good information. And the majority of people that come to Korea that do the F-513, I also think there's a requirement that you have X number of years of living prior to applying for this, but it doesn't have it on here. So again, that was told to us by our immigration lawyer. Maybe there's some misinformation on that. Matter of fact, there's a gentleman who watches the videos that I do, and he lives here in Korea. He's an expat as well. And he found some information that he got, and he applied for the F-513 visa and a little bit different information. So, it's just very difficult. And sometimes it's frustrating because there's so many different versions. And like I said, I had people swear up and down that the age was 65. Well, upon further investigation, what I found out is that person was 65 years old and they applied for that visa and it was approved. So they were told, and I think what it was a translation error. So when they said, hey, I heard about this F-513 visa, they go to an immigration lawyer. The immigration lawyer says, yeah, you're 65, you can do this, this, and this. And so somehow in the translation process, he came away with the idea that you had to be 65 years or older. Then I had another gentleman tell me that no, it's 62, and he was told the same thing. His immigration lawyer said, well, it's 62, and you had to have twice the GNI of Korea, blah, blah, blah. Same thing that we saw because he didn't do the language requirement. So he told me, and a few other people told me, that the age was 62 and older. So that's when we asked our immigration lawyer, who is here in Korea. Matter of fact, the wife just talked with him about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Within the last 2 weeks, that it can be younger. How much younger? I don't know. I'm 58, but the thing is, I don't make enough money and don't have. I think it said that you had to have 3 or 5 years of permanent resident living. And again, It's a little frustrating because I'm a person who is like, excuse me. I'm a person who wants to see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. Make it plain and simple for me. But it is frustrating to find some of this information in Korea. So one of the good thing is that you have people that have come to Korea. They have done the visas, like the F-513 or the F-1 or the F-4s and different things. And they can help people who are thinking about coming and being an expat in Korea or retiring in Korea under these visas, and they can definitely point you in the right direction to get better information. So that's the good thing. And then, for the most part, it ends up, if you're here in Korea and you get an immigration lawyer, like we have ours, they do really great service, and we use them to do our F1 and F4 visas, which you can do before you even come to Korea. But with that, we were really satisfied, and they work with Korean immigration. Now, it should be noted this is going to stir the pot even more, that certain immigration offices in different cities within Korea will give you different information. God's honest truth. So it's almost like the banking thing. The banks, some banks from the same name of the bank have different franchisees or different offices in different cities will have different requirements for opening up a bank account. And matter of fact, there's even Korean banks in different cities that won't take foreigners and allow you to open a bank account. But in a different city, they will. So, yeah, it's a very fluid and flowing type of thing, and that can be kind of stressful. So, it's, do what you got to do. Your due diligence, get with somebody who knows or has gone through it, which I found very valuable with our immigration lawyer. There's other people. I hope the guy will reply, because he got his F513 and he had some interesting information. Let me see if I can pull that up and go over the information. F-5-13. And, okay, I'm just going to read you this. But this guy named Tim, he says, if you're 60 or older, make twice the GNI of Korea, which is about 33 or 34. Pensions, Social Security, your pensions must be more than the Korean GNI of the previous year. Talked about that. You can get on the F513 visa. Depending on how busy, it can take up to 9 months for it to be approved. His got approved in 6 months. So, and again, all of this depends on how busy they are. People told me that the F1 and F4 visas would get approved in, month and a half to 2 months. But it was during the holiday season. So that's why ours took a little bit more, and they were a little bit backlogged, so it took 2.5 months. So again, take everything with a grain of salt. Tim ends up saying there's the application form, the proof of income, bank statements showing the pension, possible criminal background check, passport and copy, the photos of your, passport photos, copies of those, proof of residence. So in other words, a rental agreement, or, if you own the house or a family member's house, the deed and all that stuff. And the cost is 300,000 won, which 300,000 won, let's just plug those numbers in, divide by, we'll just say it's about 1430, I'm guessing. So it's about $210, somewhere around there. You have to, and like I said, when you make it easy for the immigration people, in other words, taking these documents, having them in English and translating them, or having a translated copy in Korean, will greatly help your cause and make it easier. Maybe that's why his ended up being 6 months. They say it takes about 8 months process, and you can't leave Korea. Then they give you a letter extending your stay until the decision is made. So just like when we arrived here on a 90-day tourist visa, we applied for the F1 and the F4 visa, everything is on hold until you get a response back to your application. Whether it's yes or no, you're put in this limbo status, and so you don't have to worry about being deported out of Korea during that time. If they disapprove the application, they'll give you 2 weeks notice to leave or apply for an extension. So that was a consideration that somebody had asked me, and I didn't know, but Tim ended up knowing, and that's why I'm sharing this with you, because Tim's an awesome guy. His took, I came in on a U.S. passport, and they told me I could not leave the country until the decision was made. Thus, I could not get a resident card for 5 months. So, he did it a little bit different situation. So if you have to wait, it's, waiting around in Korea, it's not a big deal. There's enough here in Korea that you can go and do, and it is what it is. Once you get it, it is permanent. You just have to go in every 10 years and get fingerprinted. There are no other requirements. So it's that's some really good information on that, on the F513 visa. And considering that the majority of people that I associate with or contact me, being expats and doing the same thing, trying to retire in Korea on the F4 and F1 visa, and eventually getting like the F513 visa, we're older people. I'm 58. I'm just kind of I'm a youngster compared to some of these people. Probably one of the younger ones. But generally, it's people who have hit retirement age. They're going to be 62 or 65. I met a gentleman who was like 70 or whatever the other day, and it was interesting because he just decided to come and retire in Korea with his wife. So that's a thing as well. So the age requirements, I guess what I'm saying is the demographic is a lot older, so we kind of do the same things and we have the same requirements, same information, albeit sometimes there's misinformation, translation problems from varying Korean immigration offices, and yeah, it's just a whole barrel of fun. But yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. So for me, I'm going to have to wait because I don't meet the the 2-year GNI requirement for Korea, and I'll have to wait until I'm like 62 or something happens, I win the lottery or whatever, because I'm not making enough money to hit that GNI, 2-year GNI, which is, let's say it's 33,500. And so that's about 67,000. And so, yeah, I'm short. I'm short on the money when it comes to that. But when I get my, let's see, just plugging in some numbers. Okay, so let's say not that times that. Yeah, so if just general numbers that I'm kind of throwing for myself, with the money and the funds that I have, I'm not able to get the F513 visa yet because I don't have enough funds. But once I draw my Social Security at age 62, then I will probably meet that eligibility. I just hope that the exchange rate doesn't go in the other way and make it harder, because then I'll have to wait until I'm later. But I'll make a determination on that depending when I hit 62 to see what the exchange rate is. Maybe there'll be some changes in Korean immigration between now and then. And then, other things can change as well. There's been some talk of how returning Koreans, like my wife, was a Korean citizen, became a U.S. citizen, came back to Korea on an F4 visa. But they're saying that when you hit age 65, you can get dual citizenship for Korea and the United States. There has been some talk, nothing really reliable, but there has been talk of what they want to lower that age to 55, or lower the age. But there hasn't been a lot of traction on that. So again, it depends. Things can change quick, or change can happen over a long period of time. So, yeah, it's very interesting. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, what I do know is that it's hard to find good information on Korean visas. One, for the fact that the Korean embassy and consulate information varies from, state to country to whatever on their visas. The way that it's organized in their subcategories, you think it would be listed on the Korean government consulate embassy webpage, but it's not. Not like what we saw on Wikipedia or that IBF site that lists all of those, but even those some of those are outdated, and how often it's kept up to date, I don't know. But yeah, it can get a little bit frustrating. So, and there's people that have argued with me and said, no, that's not the way it works. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. This is how it worked for us when we got our F1 and F4 visa. And this other individual saying, well, that's not how it worked, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, then how do I have my Korean registration card? How has my visa been approved if that's not how it works? And again, I'll concede that, maybe things have changed in the last 2 years, but that wasn't the case. So again, it kind of depends on the offices that you go to. Generally, for the most part, they follow the same rules. Some people won't give you the right information. That's happened. Other people that I've run into, they went to, Korean government city office for immigration, and they neglected to tell them about a certain form that they were supposed to have. Then, so that kind of postponed their thing, and it's not even on their website, in the Korean website. So, but it's a requirement. So again, it's it's a little frustrating. It's a little frustrating. But you just need to take that with a grain of salt. Don't let it get up your nose, and just, do the best you can with what you have. And if I got my visas, my wife and I, we got our visas, don't argue with me and say that's not how it's done, because we have our visas. So apparently that's how it was done for us at our immigration that we went to with the immigration lawyers that we had. If you got it in a different manner or just had slightly different, forms or whatever it is, I can't argue with that because you got it approved. We're here. So that's a bonus for us. We should be happy. Don't get down on me and say, "Oh, you're all wrong," and blah blah blah. It's like I'm just sharing our experiences, and it worked, and we have our cards, and we're here in Korea. So I don't know what to tell you, but some people are just born to argue, and I'm open to correction, and actually because of that guy Tim. There's information there that I'm latched onto, and it's like, okay, I'm going to hold on to this because he has actually went through that process. So that holds a lot of credence with me. So as averse to somebody who hasn't gone through that and is just pumping information from what they find on the interwebs, I think that person, the person who's actually gone through that, I'm going to put more trust in that with like what Tim says versus somebody else who hasn't done the actual visa. So, it's interesting. It is what it is. So anyway, that's what we got going on with the page now. I'm going to try to do a monthly expense video. We'll see how that goes. So again, cross your fingers for that. We'll see if that comes into play. But if you have any questions, concerns, tips, tricks, or whatever, regarding being an American expat in Korea under the F4 and F1 visas, you can email me. Matter of fact, I just answered an email this morning. There it is there. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Buried Life, which is, that right there. I do a lot of hobby stuff, but I also do the American expat thing, so there's that. And if you got any useful information that really just pricks your heart and you want to do something special, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box. And like these people here, they bought me coffee for immigration information, sharing our stories on being American expats, doing hobby stuff, 3D printing, resin, miniature painting, all that stuff, or just buying coffee in general. I mean, I bought coffee for a number of people using the Buy Me Coffee site. So, we just kind of throw that around, but you don't feel that you need to. The biggest thing that I would really appreciate would be a like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. So, don't worry about the coffee thing. Like and subscribe my YouTube channel because I'm trying to grow that. It's not even monetized, but I'm trying to grow that. And it's just kind of a hobby thing that I have that I just want to see grow and see how big I can get that in this niche little field that I'm in. I don't know. Maybe I'm swimming upstream. So that's going to be it for today. Appreciate you all watching, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, see ya. Good stuff.